In this video, we're going to talk about multiplying integers. And when you're multiplying integers, there's really two rules that you have to keep in mind. I'm not going to go through here and prove the rules to you. That's kind of for a different day. However, these are not assumptions. These are proofs. And so there is a why behind it. I perhaps will make another video. I do recommend that you go visit Khan Academy at Khan Academy, KhanAcademy.org. And Sal Khan has an excellent video as to why a negative times a negative is a positive. I prefer a little more rigor in mine, but he has understood it enough and has such a grasp of it that he can explain it in easy terms. So I encourage you to go there and check that out. Okay, so the two rules. When multiplying two numbers with the same sign, the answer is always positive. And this kind of comes back to this whole idea of the negative of a negative. Okay, so if we take a look at the first one, 3 times 4, that means that we add 3 4 times. So we say 3 plus 3 is 6 plus 3 is 9 plus 3 is 12. And you can't see it, but I'm actually holding up the number, my 4 fingers doing this. So that's 12. Okay, when you multiply two negatives, you're really saying take 3 times 4 and take the negative of the negative. And so you can kind of split it up that way. Well, the negative of a negative, or the opposite of a negative, is a positive. And so you still get a positive 12. So when the two numbers are the same sign, you get a positive number. When you're multiplying two numbers with different signs, the answer is negative. So you have a negative here, a positive here, you get a negative 12. And because multiplication is what they call commutative, meaning that you can reverse the order and not change the value, this doesn't change the value either. The sign can be on either number, doesn't matter. So those are the two main rules when you're dealing with multiplying integers. You have to keep track of the signs. I cannot stress this enough. Signs are usually the reason why people are getting their answers wrong. It's very, very easy to miss signs. All right, so now let's kind of expand this and says, well, what if you're multiplying many negatives and positives? So I'll just throw one out there. Let's say it's negative 2 times negative 3 times 2 times 4 times negative 5. What would that be? Okay, well, we can kind of break this down, and we're using the associative property of multiplication, and we're just going to kind of group things together. Well, in this first grouping, we have a negative times a negative. Well, that's going to be a positive. Okay, so 2 times 3 is 6, so that's going to be a positive 6. Times 2 times 4 is 8, so that's going to be positive 8. And then we still have our multiplying by a negative 5. And so if we do this again, we have, and I'm going to rewrite this using the commutative property of multiplication. I'm going to bring this negative 5 over here in front of the 8. So I have 6 times negative 5 times 8. And the reason I'm doing this is to make it easier on myself. Because 6 times negative 5, a positive times a negative, is going to be a negative. However, 6 times 5 is 30. You say, well, wait a minute. That didn't make it any easier. Ah, but it did. 3 times 8 is 24. Bring the 0 down. And so 30 times 8 is 240. But now it's a negative times a positive, and so the answer is going to be negative. And so we had 3 negatives, we got a negative answer. We had 1 negative here and here, and we had a negative answer. So 1 negative. And let's make up a couple of different things here. Let's say that this is the number of things and this is the sign of the answer. Okay, so we had one negative. We had a negative answer. We had three negatives. We had a negative answer. So now, is this going to work every single time? Well, let's go ahead and extend it one more time just to see if the pattern kind of fits, because it looks like maybe, well, it skipped 2. Maybe it'll skip 4. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. But right now, we're just going to work with the sign. So I'm going to say -1 times -1 times -1 times -1 times -1. Okay, we know that it really doesn't matter what numbers I put in there. The sign is what's important. And so I'm just going to do these in chunks. So negative times a negative is a +1. Negative times a negative is a positive, and 1 times 1 is 1. Bring down my multiplication in between. So I'm grouping them like this. And then times -1. And then if we keep bringing this down, we see that 1 times 1 is +1 times -1. Positive times a negative is a negative. 1 times 1 is 1. So I got a negative again. 5 negatives multiplied together made a negative. So 5 negatives made a negative. So now we have this pattern here. And this pattern will continue. Okay, so we can argue that this pattern will continue, and therefore we can make this general statement. So now that we've had this pattern going on, let me tell you this. If the number of negatives in a problem, and this is in a multiplication or division, negatives, multiply or divide, okay, is odd, the answer is negative. On the flip side of that, if the number of negatives is even when multiplying and dividing, then the answer is positive. Okay? So if the number of negatives that you're multiplying together is odd, then the answer is negative. If the number of negatives you're multiplying together is even, the answer is positive. And this also works with division, which I'll talk about in a later video. So you can use this with exponents. If you take a negative number and raise it to an odd power, I can tell you right now the answer is going to be negative. I don't know what 3 to the 5th power is, but I do know it's negative. -3 raised to the 5th power, and it's an odd number of multiplications, and it's negative, then you're going to get a negative answer. -3 raised to the 6th power, I know is going to be positive. I don't know what 3 to the 6th is, but I do know that my answer is going to be positive. This is a great check. So this is a rule worth memorizing.